Mark Lackey is joining us, CHF Capital Markets, and Mark and I have discussed many times in the past agricultural products. And in particular, you made a distinction between SOP and MOP.
That's right, Pat.
Sulphate of potash?
Correct, Pat, versus muriate of potash.
See, I got a good memory.
Very good, Pat. And in fact, it's interesting because, you know, over the years, the premium was, for a long time, was about 50% on these two, SOP being higher than MOP. But in the last year, one of the reasons why I've become a lot more fascinated with SOP is now I got a quote yesterday of a price in the U.S. at $738 a ton for SOP, and MOP anywhere between $270 and $300. So the gap has widened dramatically here between MOP and SOP. And I think we've talked about this before, Pat, that because of the chloride ion that's in MOP, it's fine for some crops. It's not feasible for others. And so if you see citrus, fruit, vegetables, tea,
coconut,
those markets require SOP or nothing at all. Don't use MOP because it's actually going to cause you issues. So as we've seen growth in China, India, and Brazil in particular in those areas, the demand has really gone up here in the last few years. As a consequence, the price has skyrocketed. It's analogous to if you had an oil field and you came into me, what are we, $91 WTI? It'd be like I'd be giving you $170. Now, I don't know of anybody in the world that gets anything more than maybe 10 or 15 bucks on the upside for higher quality oil, because that's the way the prices work. So this is an exceptional area of the SOP market, but it's still one that's not particularly widely followed, and you know, I'm trying to do my best to change that.
Okay, let's just limit our discussion to that, because I do want to get into the recommendation. Potash Ridge is a name we've talked about before too. That's
right, Pat. And when they did their feasibility study last November, I took a look at that, and when I saw that their operating costs would be $173 a ton US, I think it's excluding royalties, I thought, boy, these are pretty good margins. And of course, the price of SOP's gone up in that last year even more. So it's a great opportunity. It's in Utah. The other thing, Pat, they've made their milestones this year. They said they would get their water permit. They told me they would get their mining permit. They've done a deal with the construction management company. So every milestone they said they'd meet, they've met. So I think this is a great opportunity to play the SOP market with Potash Ridge. It's by far, in my view, the one junior company I really like, and you're going to get leverage because it's all SOP.
Are they actually getting potash, SOP, out of the ground?
Not yet, no. They'll be a producer within a couple of years. I mean, you have to go through the whole permitting process, feasibility process, but they know now what they have and they know what the costs are going to be. Now it's a question of taking it further along the line and executing it. And it reminds me of a lot of those potash MOP players, Pat, that I played back in 2007, 2008 that got taken out within a couple of years. At much higher prices, I might add.
Right. But here's the risk, okay? I don't know whether the SOP price is going to stay up there because it's a fairly recent phenomenon, right? And these guys aren't getting it out of the ground. They're 2 years away from that. Is it too early to get in on something like that? Or?
You know, it's interesting you say that. I was thinking about two stocks today, and I won't mention the names, but I was thinking they were too early to be in last year, and you know, one's up now from $2 to 11, and the other one's gone from $5 to 30. So I guess I was wrong in being worried about being too early. Now, those weren't in the commodity side, Pat, but it just shows you sometimes it's always hard to know. I mean, I know there are some people that said to me they get closer to production, I'll look at the story. But the markets look out. And so it's hard to say how soon you want to wait. I mean, I'm in, and I'm in at prices slightly lower than we are today because I don't want to be late. I want to be early, and if I have to wait, I'll wait it out. But you're right. I mean, there's always some execution risk, and there's always some price risk. I look at the price side, though, Pat, and it just looks to me like the demand is going to keep growing, and I don't see a whole lot of additional supply throughout the world. So I feel pretty confident that price is going to remain quite high for a long period of time.
When you make an investment like that, and you realize that it might not go up right away, what do you give yourself in terms of, I got the story wrong? Like, what would change your thesis?
Okay. They've been executing extremely well and continue to meet all the milestones. Why do companies drop off my list? People ask me that question all the time. It's a good question, Pat. When people stop meeting the milestones, when they start over-promising and underproducing, that's a red flag. And the second thing is, sometimes on some commodities, I'm not always right. I mean, we know the uranium price this year, it's starting to recover, but it's been pretty bad. So but even there, I'm not going to necessarily change my view unless I see something structural. If there was some kind of great invention came in with some substitute for SOP, well then, you have to be aware of those possibilities. But since I think those situations are unlikely, my most likely scenario is I'm going to be sitting on my position for the next 2 years and see where it takes me.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's move on to canola. The old rapeseed. Canola is a much more friendly name.
I don't quite know why it was called what it was in the old days. But
that's a good question.
It's not something I've researched.
They're beautiful fields when you see them.
Oh, they're terrific.
Yeah.
And, Canada is one of the biggest producers of canola in the world. It's a great product, Pat. It's been endorsed by heart associations of both Canada and the United States. Great meal, also very good in terms of from a oil use.
Yeah, for cooking purposes. There's no flavor in it.
Right. You can cook it at a high level. So there's a lot of advantages. So I like canola, but I was having a tough time figuring out how to play it. And then I came across a company, Input Capital. And what they do, Pat, is they're actually a streaming company. So think of them along the lines of a Silver Wheaton or some of the guys that used to do streaming in the metals industry,
right,
where you do a deal with them. Okay, you're a farmer. You go in there. They pay you upfront money. You don't sell them your whole crop. You sell some of your crop at a prescribed price. Over
like a forward contract.
Exactly. Over so many years. So it really is very similar to that, Pat. And I like this idea because, and I'm surprised nobody thought of it sooner, because this gives canola producers who don't necessarily want to go to their friendly bankers, want to look at another option. They can also go and deal with a royalty streaming company like this. And for a company that's fairly new, Pat, it's done very well. Stock price is up from the last time we recommended it, but I would suggest that these are early days, and I wouldn't worry if you missed the first 30 or 40 cents on it.
While you were talking, I looked up rapeseed. It comes from the Latin for turnip, and it has to do with round and long. So that would describe the grain.
Okay, yeah, that would. Yeah, okay. Well, that's
rapa,
very interesting. I mean, I took Latin in grade 11, but it's been a while.
Same with me. Okay, so that's Input Capital taken care of. Phosphate. You and I don't think we've ever had a discussion on phosphate.
No, I haven't talked about phosphate in a while, Pat. Usually, when I was on another network, was usually about Agrium, the big guys, and big phosphate producer. But phosphate's got some unique characteristics in terms of, particularly in the production of protein. So if you want to grow the crops that the livestock need, usually they're phosphate driven. And we're seeing a huge increase in protein demand, not just in China and India, but interestingly enough in South America and Central America. So the phosphate prices are starting to recover nicely again. About 75% of the phosphate in the world comes from one country, Morocco. So it's a pretty solid situation in terms of, it's almost an oligopoly if you look at it when one country has that kind of production.
Morocco, is it politically sound?
It's, from an African viewpoint, I'd say it's pretty solid. Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Compared to, well, I'm not going to get into countries I don't like. But I think that the issue here is these guys are down in Peru and Colombia, which are two jurisdictions I do like in South America.
This is Focus Ventures, right?
That's right. That's right. Okay. Focus Ventures, they have their prospect down in Peru, and it came up on my screen just 3 weeks ago, because they had come up with reserve numbers, and I thought, boy, those are very good numbers. Not only is it a pretty good number in volume, but I really liked the grade. And then they said the next thing they're going to do is a PEA. So they're moving this company forward. It wasn't one that I had even had on my radar screen 2 months ago. But I was, again, back looking for some junior phosphate players, and they are somewhat few and far between. The market really is pretty much controlled by the big players and the country of Morocco. But if you can find a small guy in a good strategically located area, then you could have something quite interesting.
Yeah. The issue is Peru has had issues with some of the mining stocks, and I'm thinking gold in particular. They
have had, Pat, and in some areas, and there's no question about that. But it seems like when you look at the situation regarding phosphate, that doesn't seem to be an issue in terms of the locals or any of the other related issues. They have no problems with phosphate. Of course, it's mined a lot differently, and it doesn't have some of the byproducts and some of the issues you might get when you're mining base metals and gold, for example. So they've had no problems in terms of local environmentalists or local people. They've all been very supportive of phosphate. And I think the farmers like it because it's an opportunity for them to have a local phosphate market.
Oh, isn't that something? Yep. Okay, Mark, great to have you back.
It's great to be here, Pat.
Talking farming.
That's right.
I'm going to keep talking farming after this. Mark Lackey joining us, CHF Capital Markets, Executive Vice President, but the President and Chief Executive Officer of Farmers of North America, will be joining us.